You're listening to WCAT Radio, your home for authentic Catholic programming.
Everybody, welcome to Faith in Sport, wherever, whenever, however you are joining us. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. You are listening to Radio Maria. This is Faith in Sport, where we apply our faith to all aspects of sport, whether you're a referee, whether you're administrator of sport, whether you're a parent, whether you are a player of any level. It doesn't matter how you're involved in sport. This show is for you. Here's what we're going to do today. We are going to talk today's sports topics, including our hit and miss with Ed Billick. He's going to join us in 1 minute. In the second half of the show, Jason Murphy, host of the radio show The Obligation, heard on Carolina Catholic Radio and on wherever you can get a podcast. He's going to be joining us for the second half of the show. We're going to do weekend headlines, and we're going to have our quick Q&A with Dr. A. I mentioned Ed Billick's with us today. He's on the line right now. Ed Billick, brother, welcome back to the show. How you doing today?
John, it's always a pleasure to be with you here on Faith in Sport, and to all of our Radio Maria listeners, good October. It's getting a little chilly for some of you folks. I know where you're listening. Even in Texas, it's getting a little chilly. We had to turn our heat on last night. Finally, we had to get it up. Yeah, it got a little too cold in here.
You weak man. No, in fact, it was pretty cold in these parts as well. I can imagine us down here in the Carolinas, brother, that it's actually literally cold in other parts, especially where a lot of people listen to us on Radio Maria. Folks, you're listening to Radio Maria, of course, and this is Faith in Sport. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. I teach exercise science right down the road at Wingate University in Wingate, North Carolina, just outside of Charlotte. Ed's nearby. He's in Charlotte himself. Thank you for listening to the show today, however, wherever, and whenever you're listening to this. By the way, we always want to hear. In fact, somebody sent in a question, and I'm going to address that in the latter part of the show. If you have a question, if you have a comment about the show, you can do one of two things. Tweet me at j.acquaviva1. That's the number 1, j.acquaviva1. Or you can email me at faithandsport@wingate.edu. Brother Ed, one of the things that you and I just about every time we get together do is we do what's called a hit or miss, something that's positive or negative in the world of sport. As always, you go first. What do you got for me?
Well, it's a hit and a miss.
Interesting.
First of all, prayers go up for Panthers offensive lineman Chandler Zavala.
Why?
He got hurt yesterday during the game. They must have taken a 15, 20-minute. He was on the field. And the hit, which, you talk about the NFL players and the amount of Christians and godly people. Yeah. All the players were on their knees. They were all praying from both teams. Yet, that's the hit. It just continually shows me in that violent game of football, there are a lot of God-loving human beings. And I personally know a few. We've talked to a few, but just to see that happen. Oh, by the way, Chandler Zavala is okay. He was taken to the hospital for a potential neck injury, but he's going to be fine. But the miss was Fox Sports kept putting on commercials. They kept going commercial after commercial, yet we weren't there staying with the players. We weren't with the players. The game is about the players. You watch the players make all the plays, but here there's one on the field.
Yeah.
You don't know this condition. But they're out just pounding down the commercials. And then when they would come back, they didn't show the players, they show the fans. Oh my goodness. We didn't see the players. And the players were acting in their Christian way on their knees, all holding hands and playing. So that's the miss. The hit was the NFL players, very bunch of Christian guys. When it comes down to that, they're there. But the networks missed showing that, and probably intentionally. They don't like to promote that. I don't know, whatever. Anyhow, The final comment here, God rest his soul, Dick Butkus passed away in the last week. Remember what Joe DeLamalure said?
What did he say?
Joe DeLamalure, devout Catholic, he says, do I pray when in the huddle? You bet, because when I got Dick Butkus coming after me, I better be saying my prayers.
Hey, did you read anything about his Catholic faith? I want to say he was a Catholic school kid and was born and raised Catholic. Did you hear anything about his faith?
I'd have to look that up. It doesn't surprise me.
No, it doesn't surprise me either. In fact, it just sounds like a European name, Butkus. and it's quite possible that he was born and raised Catholic, but I don't know anything about it. A buddy of mine mentioned it, and I didn't look it up for the show. I should have. Ed, I love that hit, and that I understand the hit and miss aspect of what happened. But yeah, I agree, because I think for the most part, and I think you would agree with this, that most people, I think, are Christianity, right? And even the people that don't consider themselves Christians, I want to say that almost all of them are not anti-Christian. And so when TV stations and people in general, whether it's a conference or whatever you're doing, whatever is going on, it seems like they're always catering to that really small percent who are kind of offended by it. And I agree. That's one of the few truly uplifting things that can happen as a result of an injury, is that the people come together. And what you experience, Ed, it's a true fraternity, isn't it? Right?
Oh,
It's a true fraternity, and they ultimately say the person's well-being is bigger than the game itself. And I agree that if I was watching it, I think I would have made the same observation as you did, in that they had a really nice opportunity there. Fox, was it? Fox,
to promote the faith of the players, but they don't.
Absolutely.
It has nothing to do with tackling or scoring points.
No, I agree. Folks, you're listening to Radio Maria. This is Faith in Sport, where we look at sport through a Catholic lens. Thank you for joining us today. Remember, I want to hear from you, questions or comments, or somebody that you might think would be a good guest on this show. And in fact, toward the end of the show, I'll give out that information in which you can contact me. All right, Ed, we're talking about our hit and miss, and you just gave your hit/miss. Mine is a hit, and mine is kind of lighthearted, and it has to do with fans that have a chance to get a type of souvenir. And so let me set this up. Bryce Harper, the right fielder slugger for the Philadelphia Phillies, he checked his swing last week on a pitch. And in fairness to Bryce, he actually did check his swing. When they showed it in slow motion, he didn't really come close to going around. And that has everything to do with the story, because he checked his swing, but the home plate umpire checked with the third base umpire, and he goes, "Did he swing or not?" And of course, Ed, the guy goes, "You swung." And of course, it struck him out. I shouldn't say of course, but it struck him out, right?
Yeah.
And Bryce Young goes down there. He gets so frustrated.
Bryce Young, you mean Bryce Harper?
Bryce Harper, sorry.
Yeah,
Bryce Harper gets so frustrated, and he starts an argument that the manager has to come out. Anyway, he's walking back toward the dugout, and he tosses his helmet out of frustration into like the third or fourth row. And all these people go after it, mainly adults. And this kid, I think he's around 10 years old, Ed, he ended up with the helmet. And this is what he said in that interview after the game was over, when asked, "How did you come about this helmet?" This is what he said.
It got bounced into the aisle, and then 3 or 4 other grown men went for it. And then Dad knew he wouldn't get it, because he would not win a tugging game with 3 or 4 other grown men. So he just started saying, "Give it to the kid," and then that worked.
What was running through your mind as you're going for this, and then you see adults going for it as well?
I was just backing up, because I did not want to get hurt. I did not want to get involved at the time.
I love it. In fact, his dad, it was so funny, because I think his dad, in his wisdom, said something like, I'm not going to get this. I'm not going to win this war. And he was a quick thinker, and he said, "Listen, let's give it to the kid." And I'm wondering if the other people that were tugging after this helmet, Ed, actually knew that it was his son that he was referring to. Anyway, he got the helmet. Bryce Harper signed that helmet. Does that kid have a souvenir or what, brother?
Yeah, for life. And I love his old school look there of his Phillies uniform, the baby robin blue.
I know, it is great. Hey, listen, you sent me something. I want to switch gears here and talking about faith on the field and faith in sport. There was an interview that Tua Tagovailoa gave. He's the left-handed quarterback for the Miami Dolphins, and you sent this to me, and I want to say that this is one of the better clips you're going to hear where people talk about their faith. And in particular, Ed, this is so great because he puts prayer and the Christian life, basically comparing it to the importance of sport. So this is Tua Tagovailoa, again, the quarterback of the Miami Dolphins. And this is what he said. And he had a loss, and I think he was asked something along the lines of, put this loss in perspective. This is what Tua Tagovailoa said.
Yeah, I think the best thing about being a believer of Jesus Christ, like to me, is that good Lord up above doesn't care whether you win a game, whether you lose a game. And for me, it's been a little tough having to play on Sundays, having to understand that, not able to go to church. Really, a lot of it is having to watch church online after games and things like that. But allowing me this platform, is, to me, is the best thing in the world, to be able to profess my faith, something that I firmly believe in, something that's been foundationally instilled in me at a young age. And when I'm out there, like I even pray before I go out to series and whatnot. Like I'm always praying,
Is that good or what?
Oh, that's great stuff.
It is, and it's classy, and it shows a great deal of maturity, and it shows a great deal of courage, because it goes back to what you and I were saying just a minute ago, brother. This is a culture in which just a few years ago that it was not only accepted, it was, I think, embraced. And now it's kind of done that turn in the last, 10 years or so, where I think a lot of people still believe. There's probably a slightly smaller percentage of people that don't believe, but there's still a great deal of people that do believe. It's just that it's taken the turn of, you don't talk about it, you don't push it on anybody, you don't profess it. And here he is not only saying that's a big part of his life, but he talks about it in comparison to the world of football. And he really sees it. I think I'm paraphrasing what his words were there and what he went on to say, because that interview went on for like about another 30 seconds or so, but that he sees football as a means to profess his faith. There's one thing I want to say before you comment on this great interview by Tua Tagovailoa. And that is, he says, I don't have a chance to go to church. And this is one more reason why our boy Tua would benefit from becoming Catholic, because then he could go to church on Saturday night and still meet the holy day of obligation.
That's
Brother,
exactly what I was going to say.
Is that true? Did you catch that as well when he said, I can't go to church on Sunday, and that the games and the NFL keeps me from doing that? So go ahead, your commentary on that, brother.
I got two comments here. One, I love that. That's why I sent it to you, and I love the platform. Second of all, Dick Butkus, we were talking about him here a few minutes ago. I found this. He was never public about his faith. However, according to various sources, he was Christian. It's noteworthy that Butkus was brought up in a Catholic Lithuanian American family.
There you go.
Though this does not offer conclusive insights into his personal religious convictions, many assume and believe that Dick Butkus was a Catholic.
There you go. Very good. Very good. In fact, this is, I think this is a good encouragement to our listeners, Ed, that we should be praying for the dead. We should be praying for people that just died. We should be doing that on a regular basis. And I really believe that one of the things that kind of promotes us in praying for the dead is that when somebody we know or cared about does that, right? When somebody, when somebody does just that, I should say, that if they die, and sometimes it takes somebody that is well known, even though we didn't know them, like an actor or an actress, a politician or a sports star, that is a good reminder that we should be praying for their souls, because in some cases there are nobody praying for them. And I think this is a good time to encourage our listeners to do just that. Anything else on your mind, brother, from the world of
we all have God moments, John, and I think I would love to share this with you here. And for all of our listeners, I had a friend of mine I've known all my life, a Jewish fellow.
Got it.
Called me last week, and he says he's converting to Roman Catholicism.
Oh, come on. That is fantastic. And
Says,
how do you know this guy?
he's heck, from high school, and we lost touch for a while. But no, he said there were some moments in his life where he wished he was a Catholic and what he's understood from Catholicism. So he's starting RCIA, and I'm going to be. I said, hey, I'll be a coach. Why do Catholics do this? Why do they do that? Give me a call. Let's talk.
Yeah.
So, that was definitely a God moment.
Oh, absolutely. I tell you, brother, I get so inspired by that when people do it for this reason alone. In a way, it didn't take much courage for you and I to stay in the faith. It certainly is. There's some courage there. There's some effort on our part, and it's through, God's will that you and I still wake up every day, and we are Catholics, and we are members of our faith and participants in our faith and so forth. But I mean this, Ed. I give credit to the people who convert for this reason. It's not just them who are converting, but the people around them, in most cases, have to at least express some form of acceptance to it. And I think there's a whole lot of people, and I've said this before, this could be an overstatement, Ed, but I truly believe this, brother. I truly believe that there'd be more people that would be converts to the faith if they had more support around them, like if their husband or wife was supportive of it, if people in their family were supportive of it. But I think there's so many people, Ed, that they don't even want to touch it. It's going to be such a big deal. It's going to be such a long road that they walk down, and they're not going to have anybody walking down with them. And God bless your friend. Tell me his first name, and this would be a great opportunity for
his name is Josh.
Josh. Very good. And this will be a great opportunity for the listeners of Radio Maria and I to pray for him and anybody else, folks, in Radio Maria land that include Josh in your prayers, include anybody else, unbeknownst names, that may be considering converting to the faith. Ask God to give them courage. Ask God to give them strength to kind of make those final steps to join something like RCIA, because their life is going to change for the better. And brother, thank you for sharing that story. And I love the fact that you offered your assistance. Like, brother, if you have any questions about the faith, let me know.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll be in touch, and I'll be walking right alongside of him too. So, anything else going on with you?
One more thing before we get going, brother. But I wanted to mention, what book do I have in my hand here? What do you see there?
The Catechism.
It's the Catechism, and you're going to appreciate this. But of course, the priest that told this story, but his name is not relevant to this. But one time he stood up in the very first 30 seconds of his homily one time, Ed, and he held up the Catechism, and he said, "Listen, I know some of you people are struggling with teachings of the faith. I know you're struggling with the faith itself." And he said, "Here's my suggestion. You pick up this catechism and you read it, and then you'll immediately realize why you're wrong." Come on, that's a great story. I love it, brother. Hey, listen, one more thing before we go. I wanted to share this with the listeners, and this is one more. People are going to think I'm a Deion Sanders fan, but I tell you, as a coach, I'm a huge fan of his. You're going to appreciate this. And did you hear the story about he found out two of his players during the national anthem? He coaches the Colorado Buffaloes, right? The Colorado football team. And we talked about him. He was in our hit and miss just a couple of weeks ago. He just did something tremendous a couple of weeks ago. But did you read about what happened when he found out two of his players knelt during the national anthem? Did you hear about this?
No, what do you say?
He said, and I'm quoting, "Football at its core is about unity. Every training, every drill, every play on the field is a testament to what we can achieve when we stand together. The anthem for many represents this unity. I want my players to understand the gravity of that." And he went on to say, "I respect their right to protest. I respect the fact that they have something to complain about or to protest, or there's some issue that they have, right? Why they were kneeling. There's something going on there and the reasons why they didn't do it. He fully respects that, but he gets the bigger picture. He goes, this sport is a team sport, right?" And he said, you You need to understand the gravity of this situation. And as soon as you kneel, anybody kneels, you pull away this team effort. He goes, let's stand together. Let's talk about what you're mad about. Let's talk about what you want to protest separately. But for right now, when we're on the field, we're being a team, including the national anthem, he said, you stand up. I like this guy more and more. Just about everything he says when that microphone's in front of him about team, about the sport of football, through his lens of being a coach, has been spot on so far, and I pray that he continues.
How much time do we have? Because I want to know who you're picking for Major League Baseball during the playoffs here. Who do you like?
Let's do that, brother. Who do I like? I said from the beginning, the Atlanta Braves will face the Houston Astros, but who I want the Philadelphia Phillies to face the Houston Astros. Who do you like, brother?
I like the Twins. I'd like the Baltimore Orioles, but as of we record this here, Baltimore's already almost out of it.
Yeah.
It's going to be tough for them to come back. I like the Twins, and I definitely like the Braves.
There you go.
Because we live close to Atlanta. I mean, I'd rather see the Pirates in there.
Yeah. Ed, I'm checking my stats right now. Let's see. Are the Pittsburgh Pirates even in the playoffs? No, they're not. So, darn it.
My prayer to the good Lord is they'll make the World Series one more time while I'm on this planet.
There you go. That's not a bad prayer. Brother, listen, thank you for joining me here on Faith and Sport. As always, you're a great guest.
Jason Murphy's on the on-deck circle. I can see him taking a swing right now.
No, he's going to be great. I'm looking forward to having him. Thank you, brother, for being on Faith and Sport today, and we'll talk soon.
See you, John. See you, folks. God bless.
See you, buddy. There you go. Ed Billick on the Faith and Sports show today. Thank you, folks in Radio Maria land, for listening to us today. This is Faith and Sport, where we merge sport and virtue. Listen, we're going to take a break. Right after the break, we're going to have Jason Murphy, host of the radio show The Obligation, does a bunch of other things that involve the church. Stay right there. We'll do the quick Q&A with Dr. A, weekend headlines, bunch of more stuff. Stay right there. We'll be right back here on Faith and Sport. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Faith and Sport. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. I teach exercise science right over there at Wingate University. And every once in a while, I do this show called Faith and Sport, where we apply our faith to all aspects of sport. So thank you, Radio Maria, for joining us on this day. However, wherever and wherever you're joining us. Either way, folks, I am just so glad to bring you this show. I love our faith. I love sports, and gives me an opportunity to gel those two together. Joining us in 1 minute is Jason Murphy. He's going to tell us about his show, The Obligation, some of the other stuff that he's doing to further, especially men in this walk in our faith. And we're going to talk about one of the things him and I love to talk about, and that's faith in sport. Listen, before we bring Jason Murphy on, I want to remind you folks, and I mentioned this earlier, if you have a question about the show, if you have something that you want me to address on the show, or in particular, you have somebody that you think might be a good guest on this show, you have one of two options. You can tweet me, J.Acquaviva1. That's the number 1, J.Acquaviva1. Or you can do something simpler, and that's email me. I should say simpler for some. And my email address is faithandsport@wingate.edu. That's A-N-D in the middle of that, faithandsport@wingate.edu. Folks, one of my favorite people, one of the people I met through doing this show is Jason Murphy. He has his own show on Carolina Catholic Radio. He has a podcast. You guys can listen to that. Let's bring Jason on right now. Jason Murphy, welcome back to Faith and Sport, brother. How you doing?
Thank you, Dr. John. It's always a pleasure to be with you. It's been a while, so glad to be back here with you.
I love when you're on this show, brother. I get a great deal of energy in talking to you, and you and I think have a lot in common here. We love sport and we love our faith, and this is always a great conversation. Brother, I mentioned before you came on that you have a show called The Obligation. It's on Carolina Catholic Radio, so you could go to carolinacatholicradio.org and listen to it. And how else can people hear this show, The Obligation?
Yeah, they can download it anytime. They can go straight to theobligationshow.com. And that'll take you to all of our podcast, and get caught up. We're doing was doing about once a week, kind of got into that summer doldrum a little bit, slowed down a little bit, but we just had a recent show. We had a refugee from Pakistan on, And he told his story of the persecution going on and why he's fled his country from all the persecution and the attacks on Catholic churches and Christian churches. And I thought it was a good story. It was a good reflection for us because we think we're so tormented and so persecuted here in the United States. And I don't think we know what real persecution is all about. So it's a good thing because I think the United States is certainly dancing around the cusp, if not already falling into the cup of persecution of Christians.
Yep.
So I think it was a good reflection and a good time to get that word out there.
No, that was great, brother. What's this gentleman's name? And maybe we can pray for him and all refugees. Can you pass his name along?
Yes.
Okay. I'll let you come back to that.
Yeah, let me do that.
Brother, tell the folks, if they go search for the obligation in general, what's the theme of the obligation? Why did you start doing that radio show?
Yeah, initially we kind of wanted something to give them kind of a men's forum, kind of a fly on the wall conversation, just to get guys chatting, talking about their faith, intimate things that happen within their faith walk that typically guys don't share. We get together and we do things. We'll go hit the golf ball around, or we'll go watch a sporting event, but we typically don't dig too deep into the matters of our faith. So this is kind of just one of those situations, and it evolved from there. And we do a lot of interviews, like to hear about folks' reversion and conversion stories. We certainly will hit on church politics and world politics and where they collide.
Yep.
And just kind of run the gamut. Give something for men to really cut their teeth on and start looking and knowing that there's other men out there, living their faith, practicing their faith, and having that fellowship, that brotherhood.
No, absolutely, brother. Thank you for doing that. And Jason Murphy, you're actually doing something else, right? I see you have the shirt on. The folks can't see this. They're just hearing the audio of our Zoom call, but you have a shirt on. It's called the Martyr's Walk, or at least that's what it says. And I know you've been putting effort toward this mission, if for lack of a better word. Tell us about the Martyr's Walk, and then ultimately how we can find out more about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Doc, for asking. So the Martyr's Walk, it is it's something I've been kind of working on, discerning for the past 6 or 8 months.
Okay.
Was looking for something kind of an intensive men's retreat. I've been involved with men's ministries for a number of years, starting out with the Knights of Columbus and moving to the Catholic Men's Conference, the Carolinas, and of course the radio show. But just felt a calling from God to kind of try and get guys a little bit more of a clause into them, more of an intimate kind of situation. And after several months of discernment, the Martyr's Walk was sort of born. It's basically a Ignatian retreat set by the model of Saint Ignatius of Loyola.
Yep.
It focuses on the 4 last things: death, judgment, heaven, and hell. And we take those and we smash them together with a military-style boot camp, and we use the best elements of both worlds to help build up a man and help him realize that he's made for and capable of much more than maybe what he has convinced himself or others, especially the spirit of the world has convinced him that he is capable of. We want men to be able to become the men, the fathers and husbands God has created them to be. And so as a practitioner, I don't know if that's the word, a practitioner of mixed martial arts, I love studying Bruce Lee, his Jeet Kune Do, because he basically took the best of all of the martial arts and took the best pieces and put them together. And he caught a lot of flack from that, from the traditionalists, of martial arts. But it turns out to be one of the most effective. So that's kind of what we've done on this spiritual aspect, is we've taken the best of sort of the spiritual retreat of the Ignatian retreat, which is highly effective. It's done in silence. There's a lot of meditation and lessons and prayer. And we've combined them with the elements of a boot camp, which is highly effective because, our military puts men through boot camps so that, they go out, they train hard, and they are taught not to leave their men behind or leave the man, their brothers on the battlefield. And of course, on the Christian walk and in the Catholic faith, our spiritual walk, we live in that battlefield. So how much more important it is to not leave our brothers behind in the spiritual life as well. And so we combine those, that shared traumatic experience that the military uses through the boot camp. We take that, we combine it with a spiritual aspect, and it's been highly effective. We started back in May, and we've had additional event in August, and our next event is set for November 30th to December 2nd. And folks want to find out more about the Martyrs Walk, they can go online to themartyrswalk.com or just Google the Martyrs Walk, and they can read up on it for sure.
That's fantastic. That's good work, brother. Tell us the 4 final things again. Death,
judgment, heaven, and hell.
Okay,
so the first 2 come to every man. The last 2 is up to you and me, brother.
That's right. I love the part about death, because basically what you're saying is you put these guys through a boot camp, so you get them to experience a near-death experience.
Absolutely, it is a virtual martyrdom. We want to push men to the furthest place they've ever been, not just physically, but also spiritually and mentally.
Yeah, of course.
So that they know they can go there.
Yes.
You don't know if you don't go, right?
That's right. No, all while in strengthening your faith, and all while building a fraternity of sort with these guys.
Absolutely, 100%.
Okay, tell us the date again. When the next one's taking
November
place.
30th to December 2nd, and that takes place out of Tega Cay, South Carolina.
Got it.
Lake Wiley, South Carolina. So just about 20 minutes down the road from Charlotte.
Got it. Folks, we're talking to Jason Murphy. He is the organizer and creator of A Martyr's Walk, and also he's the host of The Obligation. In both cases, go to the internet, use that crazy search engine to look up both of those things, The Martyr's Walk and The Obligation. You'll find out a whole lot more about Jason Murphy and his mission through our faith. Folks, you are listening to Faith in Sport, where we look at sport through a Catholic lens. Jason, on a kind of like a step down as far as seriousness goes, let's talk about, we were talking off the air in preparation for your appearance here, and you're a big LSU fan.
Yeah,
right?
Yep, guilty. Yep, that's right.
I know it's been disappointing. They came back and they won a big game the other day.
Defense
brother.
Stood up. The defense came back to life against Missouri. Yeah,
I tell you one thing, and I mean this. I couldn't be more sincere. If you watch the LSU Tigers play, you're never bored.
No,
you're never. But
it's
if
not
you're
easy
a fan,
to be a fan, but
no, brother,
it's exciting.
You know this as well as I do. It doesn't matter who you're a fan of in whatever sport. There's victory and there's defeat and there's brutal moments and then there's these glorious moments. But I'm not going to feel too sorry for you, because not only had the LSU Tigers won a recent championship, they're considered one of the greatest teams of all time. So no boo-hooing on this show. Jason, tell us about you. You and your wife were watching the LSU Tigers play, and Robert Griffin III is the color commentator for this game. And what's he say?
All right, so this is 2 weeks ago. LSU's playing Ole Miss, big rival, big rival.
Yep.
I'm sitting there, the kids are really, coming around, which is a real proud dad moment, having the kids cheer for the good old alma mater there.
Sure,
and,
sure.
We're watching the game. LSU is struggling. The defense is struggling.
Yep.
But offensively, we are performing. We are, we got Jaden Daniels, and if you haven't heard the name Jaden Daniels, pay attention, because that young man
is great.
He is following the footsteps of Joe Burrow. This guy is pretty amazing. But anyway, unfortunately, our defense was kind of crumbling, and RG3, Robert Griffin III, of course, great quarterback. He was the commentator of the game there, and towards the end of the game. Poor Jaden, he's just eaten up by the offense. Ole Miss defense just gobbled him up, and they all gathered around him and they stopped him, and lifted him up kind of in the air mid-run. And old RG3, he said they lifted that man up to the sky like he was Jesus, letting him know they were going to put him on the cross right there.
Holy smokes.
So I know we talked about it a little bit before the show. It was we were gonna come at it with like a hit. I'm gonna call it a hiss, or I'm gonna call it a mitt. It's a mitt or a hiss. I'm not gonna call it a hit or a miss on this, because I don't know. There's been a lot of controversy on what he said, but it was a little shocking. You don't expect to hear something like that.
That's right.
But Robert Griffin III, he is a Christian, so I think maybe he was inspired to say that.
That's right.
But it was interesting, and I think my wife and I probably paid more attention than the kids actually did. But all in all, hey, if we're talking about Jesus during the football game, let's do it more often.
No, I agree. He said nothing that was offensive. He was invoking the name of our Lord. It might have been a little hyperbole, right? He might have gone down that road a little too much, and he may have tried a little too hard to bring our Lord in the conversation. But he said nothing offensive. He said nothing wrong. It was a little kind of a strange analogy.
Yeah.
But I'm with you, brother. It's more of a hit than it is a miss. But overall, I think you and I would agree that it was more positive than it was just slightly negative, I guess, because nothing on the football field, nothing in the world of sport compares to the suffering our Lord did, right? His passion and so forth. But that's not what he meant. I'm sure he loves our Lord, and he meant to demean the passion in the least. But I think what he was trying to do is just invoke our Lord, and God bless RG3.
Yeah, I mean, if we hear the word Jesus on TV, that's
it's a good thing.
It's a good thing. I mean, just the name of Jesus is a prayer in and of itself. And so, hey, if there was no ill will there, and that's good. It was on his mind, and hopefully on everyone else's as well. But unfortunately, we do know that Jaden Daniels is not Jesus, because he did not return in the fourth quarter and rise from defeat. But unfortunately, Ole Miss went on to win 55-49. It was a heartbreaker in Oxford. But yeah.
And the other thing you could take away from this conversation is, if LSU's playing, pick the over, because even if the over is 100 points, both LSU and the other team is going to score 50 points each, and you'll win a few bucks.
That's right.
Listen, brother, the listeners of this show know that you and I, we have a couple themes when we chat. And one of the things you and I have talked about, because it's a passion to us, it's this big issue, not just in the social world, but it's a huge thing in the world of sport. And that's this whole thing about the transgender athlete.
Oh, yeah.
So I want to share something with you that happened the other day, and I would like your commentary on it. And this hits particularly close to home with me because of the following. It happened at Roanoke College, which is in Virginia, Salem, Virginia, and it has to do with the women's swim team. And the reason this hits so close to home is, not only did I used to live in Roanoke, brother, for 8 years I taught for Roanoke College. So let me take you down this path, and I'd like to get your commentary. Unfortunately, you're not going to be you're going to be like me, disappointed, but I don't think you're going to be shocked. So the 10 plus girls that are on the Roanoke women's swim team held a press conference at the local hotel, and it was an opportunity for them and their parents who support them to protest the fact that this guy that was on the men's swim team the year before is now competing with the women. He's parading in the locker room. He is on the same team as these women, and they were protesting this whole thing. Now, I thought it was neat that they held this press conference, and I thought it was kind of like high class that they're at this really nice hotel in Roanoke. But Jason, I found out the reason that they were at the hotel was because Roanoke College said it's too controversial for them to be protesting this, so they asked that it not take place on campus. Now, here's the thing, Jason Murphy. Brother, they want to avoid controversy. Roanoke College is allowing this person who was a dude the year before, now he's claiming to be a girl. They don't think that's controversial?
Yeah.
I mean, people can't even see straight. Right. They make so little sense. It's unbelievable. And further, my friend, I have a former colleague that's still at Roanoke College, and he told me that they were asked by the university, by the college, not to speak if the press came to them. So if they were asked this question about what do you think, they were asked to take it to the, I don't know, some type of propaganda office on campus. You're probably not going to have any different commentary opinion, but what's the first thing that comes to mind on this?
I mean, it just goes back to this situation that is of the greatest minority of people.
Yeah.
That they're allowing this to be in the spotlight, like you just said. They are putting this thing in the spotlight, and then they're surprised when the majority of people don't go along with it.
That's right.
And it can't take place on the school grounds. Like you brought it to the school grounds. Now you're gonna put your head in the sand and pretend like it didn't happen.
Yeah,
it's crazy because I mean, don't men hold all of the records now in both sex sports? I mean, it seems like I'm pretty sure that we
course,
might have crossed that boundary now.
That's right. Yeah. And
That's-
now the world record holder for any women's sport, his name is Bill.
yeah, right.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy. No, brother, you bring out a great point, and this is one that is always at the forefront. It's a micro minority. Not only is it a minority, it's a micro minority, and for some reason, somehow we're trying to protect something that is ultimately the furthest from God's truth, right? That's what you and I are after. On your show, The Obligation, on this show, Faith in Sport, we're after the truth, and people are just truly denying one of the most basic concepts to humanity, and that there are men and that there are women. Brother, and I mean this literally, the war hasn't been won, but our view has won a lot of battles. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we'll definitely, we've definitely got the war in the bag. It's just these little battles for sure. And it's crazy. Each day is just a little more crazy. Sadly to say.
I'll end on this note. We were watching something like this, my wife and I, and I looked at her, and it was something about this very thing about transgender athlete, something. And I looked at Alicia and I said, "This is insanity." And she looked at me and nodded no and said, "This is godlessness."
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I thought that was
that's what I think every time I watch the news. I mean, just watch just any mainstream media, and literally you are watching insanity. Yeah, and that's where we are.
I know I'm laughing and you're smiling, but it's absolute truth. And we could be more serious. It's unbelievable. Listen, brother, why don't you end with the way you started? Tell us how we can hear The Obligation, and tell us how we can find out more about the Martyr's Walk.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks again for having me on, Dr. John, and look forward to our next visit. The Obligation Show, you can check us out anytime at theobligationshow.com. The Martyr's Walk, if you're ready to see what you're made of, see if you're capable, will you be ready? themartyrswalk.com. You can look that up on Google, simply The Martyr's Walk. And I got to do one more shameless plug, Doc. We have the Catholic Men's Conference of the Carolinas coming up on February 10th. Headliner Jesse Romero.
Love it.
He's a home run hitter in the Catholic speaker world for sure. We're going to have Bishop Raphael Zarama from the Diocese of Raleigh to be there, celebrate the Mass for us. There'll be confessions all day, a great lineup of speakers, and a wonderful day of faith, fellowship, and prayer. So you can check that out. Go online, CatholicMenoftheCarolinas.org.
And the dates for that
have been February 10th. February 10th. Yes,
Very
sir.
good. Brother, thank you for doing that. And listen, thank you for everything you do for our faith. Brother, and thank you for being on the show, and we'll talk again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, Doc.
See you, buddy.
All right,
there you go, folks. That's Jason Murphy. Again, check him out a couple ways, The Obligation, or his radio show, or The Martyr's Walk. And again, he's headlining and running that whole thing on the Men's Conference of the Carolinas to be held February 10th. Okay, folks, listen, I promised that we would do a little bit of some light faith in sport, and we'll just talk sport in this week's headlines. And then I'm going to get to a question that was asked to me about obligation. Speaking of the obligation, about Sunday obligation when you're involved in sport. So we'll get to that part right after this. But this week's headlines in Major League Baseball, we're already in the second round of playoffs. The big matchup is between the Phillies and the Braves. The Phillies may be surging, and the Braves, well, they're just playing good. The other big series is any one where your team is involved. And I mean that. College football, several big games this past Saturday. The biggest one, a top 15 matchup between previous unbeatens Oklahoma and Texas. Oklahoma won it in a last-minute thriller. It was a terrific game. I had a chance to watch that. By the way, the current top 5 in college football are now University of Georgia, University of Michigan, go Blue, Ohio State, Florida State, and now the newest member of that top 5, Oklahoma. In the NHL, the season kicks off this week to begin a season that amazingly will run into next summer. Odds-on favorites to win the Stanley Cup are the Colorado Avalanche, the Toronto Maple Leafs, and the Edmonton Oilers. By the way, Ed's Penguins and my Red Wings are about halfway down that list. In other words, there's a chance, but not much of one. So there you have it, folks. Sports that may or may not change your life. So I mentioned in the very beginning of the show and just a couple of minutes ago, Somebody sent in a question, and it's simply this: do we have to go to Mass if there's a big game that our daughter is involved in? And of course, I think everybody listening, it's quite possible you're listening to Catholic radio and don't know the answer to this, but it's an emphatic yes. You are still obligated to attend Holy Mass. Let me start off this conversation by reading the following from nowhere else other than the Catechism. 2180, the Sunday obligation. The precept of the Church specifies the law of the Lord more precisely. On Sundays and other holy days of obligation, the faithful are bound to participate in the Mass. The precept of participating in the Mass is satisfied by assistance at a Mass, which is celebrated anywhere in a Catholic rite, either on a holy day or the evening of the preceding day. In other words, if you have a game, especially if there's a tournament where you look like you're going to be busy from the early morning hours on Sunday, either traveling or it's a tournament where it's all day and you cannot find yourself to get to Mass somehow, some way, you have still the obligation to go the day before. The one thing that I want to mention is this: if you feel like God is calling you, which he is, and I hope you have this internal feeling and there is internal motivation to pass the faith on to your kids, one of the best ways to do this is to prioritize Holy Mass. In other words, it's okay to travel on Sunday. It's okay to participate in sport. I really believe that it takes away from the family experience. That's a different conversation. But what we're talking about is there is a opportunity for you folks that you can prioritize. Okay, we have this tournament tomorrow. We have this game tomorrow. We're going to go to Mass tonight. You are making a huge statement what it means to you. You're making a huge statement what it means to your family. And if you and your spouse stand in a united front on this issue that you're going to attend Mass, whether it's on the vigil the night before or sometime in our city here in Charlotte, there's probably like most other cities, especially if there's a college Mass being held somewhere, there's usually evening Sunday Masses that meet the obligation. Find a way to do it. Do not let sports come in the way of that. Pope Francis has talked about this probably more than any other pope. He said sports are great. Sports are a way to get closer to God. Sports are a great way to build camaraderie and so forth. All those things exist. That's one of the purposes of this show. However, you do still have an obligation to our Lord, and that should take priority over anything involving sport. All right. There's always more to be said about that. By the way, my forthcoming book, Improving Your Sportsmanship Through Catholic Teaching and ... Common Sense, is coming out after the first of the year. So sometime in 2024, I'm going to release that. And I dedicate about 2 or 3 pages to the subject we just addressed, the obligation of Holy Mass. In conclusion, I like to end with a quote. This one comes from St. John Paul II, where he said, "When sports are played and understood in the right way, they are an extraordinary expression of a person's best inner energies and of his ability to overcome the difficulties of competition." Before we go, a special thank you to Ed Billick and Jason Murphy for joining me on the show today. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. Please join us next time here on Radio Maria for Faith in Sport. St. Sebastian, pray for us.
Hello, God's beloved. I'm Annabelle Mosley, author, professor of theology, and host of Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. I invite you to listen in and find inspiration along this sacred journey we're traveling together to make our lives a masterpiece and, with God's grace, become saints. Join me, Annabelle Mosley, for Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. God bless you. Remember, you're never alone. God is always with you.
Thank you for listening to a production of WCAT Radio. Please join us in our mission of evangelization. And don't forget, love lifts up where knowledge takes flight.